This is Gemara Zevachim, Daf Tzadi Tes, and we're holding at a new parak, Baruch Hashem, the 12th parak here in Zevachim, the parak of Tvul Yom. And Freilich and Chanukah, as we wrap up Chanukah, and we dive into the month of Teves, we like all the learning to be an incredible schos, Aliyas Neshama of Aryeh ben Rav Ya'akov, B'siyata Dishmaya, sponsored by his family. The incredible Koyach HaTorah to elevate the neshama of Aryeh ben Ya'akov closer to the Kisei HaKavod. An incredible yid that learned in Radin should be a Militz Yosher for their entire family and ultimately the entire Chabura. So we pick it up at a new Mishnah, and the Mishnah is going to discuss that Karbanos, we know, after the Hakravot, at times, depending on the Karban, obviously not an Eilah, the Karban is split up and given out to different Kohanim. And the question is, which Kohanim are entitled, are allowed to take part in the Karbanos? Of course, a kosher, a perfect Kohen is no shayla. But as we'll see in the Mishnah, what about everyone else? So says the Mishnah, Tvul Yom v'chusar Kippurim, Einon cholkim bekachim le'achol le'erev. A Tvul Yom, one who just went to the mikvah, a mechusar Kippurim, one who's lacking in the kapara, do not take a karban, do not take a part of the karban to eat at night. Einein noigeya, and einein who touches a karban ve'einoi makriv, but he doesn't bring the karban. And he as well does not get a portion to eat at night. Bali mumin, when it comes to one with a mum, bein bali mumin ivrim, bein bali mumin kavuim, whatever type of mumin is, whether it's going to be a mum that passes, whether it's going to be a mum that stays with the kohen, says the Mishnah, as much as, of course, they're apostle from aspects of avodah. However, cholkin va'eichlin, they get a portion in the karban, and they're allowed to eat it, avoloi, as we just spelled out, makrivin, due to their balmum, they cannot be makriv, the karban. Continues the Mishnah, if you're not ready for the avodah, then you don't get a portion in the meat. And if you don't get a portion in the meat, then you don't get a portion in the oirais, in the hides. Afilu tamei b'shas zrika damim nitar b'shas hektar chalavim. Even if one is tamei when their zrika was done, and tar by the subsequent haktara when it's burnt, einoi choylek b'basar, again because he was tamei, he was not roi at the time of the akravas hakarban, the zrika sadam. Shenemar says in the Torah, Hamakriv is Dam HaShlamim. One who brings the Dam HaShlamim is Achilavim Ne'aroin. Lo Yiyat, him it shall be, Tiyashoik HaYamin. Lemana, the right shoik, the right thigh, is him as a portion. But what do we see? We see that he has to be Roi. And we turn over to Sadites Amar Aleph, and the Gemara begins, as so many Gemaras begin, quoting the Makar. Where does the din in the Mishnah come from? That a Tvul Yom, we'll start with, of course, the top of the Mishnah, that a Tvul Yom does not get a chelik in the karban. Says the Gemara, Minan Imili Amrei Shlakish, teaches Reish Lakish Damakra, says the Pasuk HaKoyin HaMechate Oisa Yechalenu, the Koyin who throws the dam shall eat it. Says Reish Lakish, Koyin HaMechate Yoichel. Everyone, I don't know what the story is. So says Reish Lakish, Koyin HaMechate Yoichel. He darshans up the pasuk. A Koyin who throws the dam can eat the meat. Shein HaMechate Eino Yoichel. The Koyin that is not involved in the zrika does not eat the meat. But frak Gemara klalu, is that true that only the Koyin that is Mechate, that does the zrika, could eat the basar karban v'rei mishamra kula? But what about the entire mishmar of the kohanim? Dein mechatin v'oichlin. That of course not every kohen can partake in the actual zrika, and yet the entire mishmar, of course, could eat the karban. Says the Gemara, I'll explain to you what's pshat. Roi lechita kamrina navada. It doesn't mean that you actually have to be the one to do the zrikas adam. But you gotta be roi. Frak the Gemara, but 1 second. And yet, carbon. So it says the Gemara, you know what the Torah must mean when it says he eats it, yachlekena, means he gets a chelik in it, meaning anyone who's able to do the chiddur gets a chelik in it, and then again, he could give it to a child. Roi lechitoi chelik, shen roi lechitoi einoi chelik. Frak the Gemara, but wait, this is really going to hone us in the din of the Mishnah. Hare ba'amam, what about a ba'amam, din roi lechitoi v'chayilek, is not able to be involved in the actual zrikas adam, of course, and yet a ba'amam gets a chelik. Ba'amam Rachmana Rabbi says the Gemara, ba'amam has its own riboy hakra that says the pasuk kol zachar b'kayanim l'rabbis ba'amam. Frak the Gemara, v'ema kol zachar l'rabbis tful yoyim, maybe comes to include a tful yoyim. Mistavra says the Gemara, ba'amam havale l'rabbuyeh. Why? Shkein oichel. It makes sense to be marba ba'amam because he eats the carbon. Frak the Gemara, Rabba tvul yoyim havle the Rabbi Yedil or chamechzi chazi because tvul yoyim will be fully fit in the evening. He says Gemara hashtami al chazi. Right now he's not chazi. That's the reason why we're marba. That's the reason why we're marba the baal mum. Rav Yosef Amar says Rav Yosef a different way of learning. Mechti, let's see. So why did the Torah just say that it means one who does this rika? That's where two different ways of learning. You have to be ra'oi. That the determining factor is going to be if you're ra'oi or not. Excuse me. And therefore, miss my mouth. And therefore, a tvul yoyim right now cannot eat, and that's the reason right now he's not going to be included. Whereas ba'amam could yes eat, therefore he will be included. Ba'yirish lakish frak the Gemara. Ba'amam v'utamei mahu. A kain who's a ba'amam and he's also tamei, so he has both aspects. Does he get a chilik? Chazi Rachmana Rabbi. Betzem he's not chazi, and we only have this special riboya krav ba'almum that we just spoke about. So why it's a special extra riboy for, says the Gemara? So maybe mali tami mali ba'almum. There's no difference. No. It has to be one who's chach at least. Roi le'achila. Shailas HaGemara. Amar Rabba Tashma Kohen Gadol Makrev Einin V'Eino Oichel. Kohen Gadol brings a carbon when he's an Einin, but he doesn't eat the carbon at that stage. V'Eino Chaylik Lechol Erev. He doesn't get a chilek to eat at night. Kohen Gadol's an Einin could bring carbonos. However, he does not get a chilek. Says the Gemara. Shema Mina, what do we see from here? Royu Lachila B'Ina and Shema Mina, you have to actually eat it. And the Kohen is not Royu to eat it. And that's the reason why he's not going to get a chelik, and that is a klar raya to our shayla. So, Bayi Rav Oishaya, Oishia says the Gemara, Vaiter Kasha, Tamei bekarbanai sibur. A kainu is tamei when karbanais of the sibur are brought. Ma'ushi achliku loy, does he have a chelik in it? Mia mina machatem rachman. You have to actually do this reek of hanami machatu, and he is one that is be'etzim included in the chitoi. He's ra'oi lekach. Oidamano. Ra'oi lachila. It's only one who actually can eat it, and this guy cannot. Amar Ravina tashma kohen gadol makrevayim v'eino eicha v'eino chaylek lechol erev shema mina. What do we see from here? Klar. Ra'oi lachila. It has to do with ra'oi lachila bina. This guy will not be ra'oi lachila, therefore you will not get a chilek. We continue with the next part of the Mishnah. Could touch carbonais, but he doesn't bring them, says the Gemara Astira. Really? He's allowed to touch carbonais for a minhu. We're 15 lines in the bottom. The first word on the line is Nageya. Frag the Gemara from a Gemara in Yuma. Chagiga, excuse me, that we learned together. One who's an einin, one who's lacking a kapara. Srich and tefillah, they need tefillah lekodesh for kachim. So frag the Gemara, we see he needs tefillah, which means that if he touches the food without tefillah, it's going to be a problem. When does it say it's not going to work? Is if you didn't go to the mikvah at all. Right? He went to the mikvah, he just didn't get the full kapara, and that's why he could, yes, touch the karba. Nice. But if he went to the mikvah, who cares? He still is in Einin. So what does it help? Says the Gemara, I'll tell you pshat. Like kash. The Mishnah Chagiga that needs the tefillah is where he stopped thinking about actually watching himself, and therefore we're not sure if he became tamei. Whereas in our Mishnah that says you do not need to go to the mikvahs, his mind was cognizant the whole time, and he knows he never became tamei. But Hesach Hadas requires the sprinkling of the parah due on day 3 and day 7. Explains the Gemara. And the kasha is that the Mishnah and the Chagiga that we quoted just said you have to go to the mikvah, didn't say anything about Hazayah on day 3 and 7. Like kasha does chadaiti mitame meis. Meaning, the Hesach Hadas just says, I'm not cognizant I may become tummy. But what level? Says the Gemara. One is going to be of tummy mace, one is going to be of stam, touching a sharetz. Tummy sharetz, tummy malyu, harev shemesh bayi. Frag the Gemara 1 second, but tummy sharetz is not really tummy. It just requires the sun to set. Furthermore, afilu truma nami. What about truma? So says the Gemara 3 lines to the bottom. He's only guarding himself for something that should make him tamei, but not something that can make him pasul. Frag the Gemara 1 second. Either you're watching yourself or you're not. Either you're going to not touch something or yeah. Frag the Gemara, what exactly does this mean? I watch myself for certain things. Sounds very odd. Says, no, not at all. In yes, Hanyo. I'll bring you a rayo. If a basket of figs is on his head as we turn over to Sadites on midbase. Oh, Magrifa b'toichai, the basket is on his head, and the Magrifa, the shovel, is inside the basket. V'yamar. And he says, Libi ala sal. I'm thinking about the basket and Libi ala Magrifa on the shovel. Hasal dar v'amgrifa tamei. Frag the Gemara is tamei Magrifa l'sal. What does one make the next tamei? Enkli midamei kli. V'tamei mashav v'seichai. Amarava ba'imir shamartia. Midavar hamitama. V'lei mishartia midavar hapoisla. So what happened? The Galgal Mills, the story keeps on rolling. Umati l'kamei d'Ravav bar Mamal amlo shmiya liha. You're not allowed to eat. Alma ba'achila avoid rabbanon me'alya b'negia la'avid rabbanon me'alya ma'ila. We see that the ma'ila created by Chazal is not about the potential negia issue. Continues the Gemara at the 2 dots that the oinain does not get a share in the carbon. Says the Gemara, Miflag Udalai doesn't get a share. Says the Gemara, if they invite him, then he's yes allowed to eat. Then an oinain is allowed to eat, he is not allowed to be invited. But frag the Gemara, is that true? For a mini oinain erev. Avoloi bekachim. We see it b'dafka only by the Pesach, and not by other kachim. Says the Gemara, Rav Yirmiyah midifti loy kasha kan b'Pesach kan b'shar yom kan b'shar Yemois Hashanah b'Pesach Aidachel. When it comes to Pesach, I did Achel Pesach Achel Nami Kachim. Once an Oinin is in the Karban Pesach, he's allowed to eat Kachim. Sharmiz Hashanah Lochazi Lochazi. That which is not fit, you're not allowed to eat. To my Avaloi Bekachim, Avaloi Bekachim shall call Hashanah. That's what he meant. Rav Asi Amar a second Teretz Loi Kasha. Kansha Meis Loi Meis Varasar V'Kivra Bavra Asar. The Nifter was buried the same day of the Ptira. Says Gemara, but wait, Yom Kavura Loi, is this din true? But when it comes to Yom Kavura, you're telling me that there's no din of Oinin. Says the Gemara, Tafas, Leiloi Midrabanan. Says the Gemara, it's always night in such a scenario. Midrabanan. Mantananinas Leila Midrabanan. Rav Shimon, he did Danianinas Leila Midrabanan Torah. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda Rav Shimon, no. Oinein I'm a divrei Torah, I'm a divrei Seifrim. Teida, Shri Amru, Oinein Toivel, Va'ichel es Pischoi le'erev Avaloi Kachim. Says the Gemara, let's dive a drop deeper into Shitas Rav Shimon. V'savar Rav Shimon Inaslav, Leila Midrabanan. Does Rav Shimon really hold that? V'atani Rabbi Shimon, Oimer, Oinein Elam Mishalei Akarban Aisav. My love, I feel b'Pesach. So Shimon doesn't agree to the Rabbanan and Loy Levarmi Pesach. I voted Rav Shimon Rav Shlomi Kshu Shali Mevi Ve'inoi Mevi Shu Einin Minayin L'Rabbis Satayda Marbani Satayda Shkein Achos V'Simcha Kishlamim Minayin L'Rabbis Ha'ila Marbani Ha'ila Shkein Ba B'Neder B'Nedava Kishlamim Minayin L'Rabbis B'Char Meiser Pesach Marba Ani B'Char Meiser Pesach Shekein Einon Bayin Al Chet Minayin L'Rabbis Chatos V'Asher Tamalemer Zevach Minayin L'Rabbis Oifos HaMenachos. And no, truth is, we're going to stop over here before we get involved in other Karbanai service in the Menachos. Pick it up from here. B'siyata V'Shmaya.